Hi, Joe Ceci, Finance Minister for Alberta. Just at McDougall this morning, we had a media roundtable and a number of topics came up that were really interesting to chew into with the people who are here. One of those was, of course, Budget 2018. Got to explain where it's built on 3 pillars and the importance of those 3 pillars going forward. Another topic came up was about the importance of Trans Mountain Pipeline for all of Canada and particularly Alberta. We are laser focused on making sure Trans Mountain is built in as quick a fashion as possible so that we all benefit in Canada from what it can deliver for us. I had the distinct pleasure of meeting people talking about the issues of importance to them and answering questions. And so this was a really great opportunity to focus on the things that are important for local media in this city at this point in time. And I'm so glad to do it, and hopefully I have an opportunity again in the near future to do it.
ये है आपका अपना सबरंग 94.7 FM.
We'll just give everyone else to talk to you about is the whole budget. Now, did you have particular questions, Dahlia, that you want to facilitate on the budget, or do you want me to go to the next part?
I think let's go through the next part,
okay.
And then we'll go, because there's lots of questions about a variety of topics, and I think those questions will get to many of the points.
Okay. So following the worst recession in a generation, which is 2015 and 16, we're in recovery now, everyone. Things are looking up. In 2017, Alberta's economy grew faster than any other province at 4.9%, almost 5%, which is a really great economic recovery rate after a low of negative 3.5% in 2016, negative 3.5% in 2015. That takes a lot of juice out of the economy. We're putting it back now. The private sector is putting it back. We saw nearly 90,000 new full-time jobs created, primarily in the private sector in 2017, with more than 2.3 million jobs now in the province. That's more Albertans working in the province than ever before. So as a result of immigration, as a result of having a younger province and those people going to work, as a result of number of jobs opening up, more people are working in Alberta than ever before. Also, Alberta outperformed the rest of the country on key economic metrics. For instance, our GDP, gross domestic product, per capita per person in this province is 33% higher than the national average. Alberta's average weekly earnings, the amount of money Albertans make on a weekly basis, is 15% higher than the national average. And our young, skilled workforce has already helped Alberta have the highest employment rate in the country. 62% the rest of the country, average employment rate. We have 67%, so 5% more. The vital economic indicators that our economists keep a close eye on are all up. Exports are up in this province, manufacturing is up, housing starts are getting back up again, and we expect to be near the top of the economic ladder in 2018 and 2019. So our province is going to continue to fire on all cylinders in this year and next year and lead the country. That's all good news, but of course we have a lot of work to do to make sure that each and every Albertan and business feels the positive effect of the recovery. That's where Irfan comes in his ministry, making sure that those Albertans that have been left behind, that are struggling economically, are supported by his ministry. And that's why we continue to fight for pipeline access and better market access for all of Alberta's energy products. And we're going to continue to build a really resilient, thriving economy that works for all Albertans. Okay, now over to you. Mm-hmm. Over to you, and I think questions.
Okay, yes. So I know some of you sent questions already, but we'll give you, so you can get to ask them. And even if you didn't ask questions and you want to ask questions, by all means, we do have time. So I'll start with the ones who sent questions. Bunny, would you like to start?
Yeah. Okay. So regarding the part that you have sent already, just now. I just want to know based on this budget, what the actions that have been put on action
Yep,
regarding the oil refining.
okay.
Because I know that in the new budget there is a part regarding the oil refining. So what?
So we've done a number of things. We've continued on a really successful petrochemical diversification program, and we call it 2, because we started in the last budget in 17, and we're continuing it in this budget. We have put tax credits in place to attract private investment so that companies would come to Alberta and set up basically plants on gas plants, and they would take off the product necessary to make plastics. So we want to refine the energy that's in this province, make plastics out of it, instead of shipping it down to the Massachusetts coast where they do the same thing and importing it back. There's we put $500 million in budget 2017 to attract investment, and as a result, we had $20 billion worth of interest in that money, and we approved 2 plants to be up in the heartland or around the St. Albert area of Edmonton. And they're going to be essentially drilling, bolting these plastics manufacturing plants onto existing refineries for gases. Now we've done the same thing again in budget 2018, and we focused $1 billion in tax credits and loan guarantees on partial upgrading. So we're going to see, as a result of this, possibly 5 partial upgraders that'll take oil to a diesel or that sort of level, and add more value to the product. That's one of the initiatives we've done in 2018, 2 of the initiatives actually, PDP2 and the partial upgraders, that'll help attract more private investment in budget 2018.
And it will open new opportunities as well.
Yes, new opportunities. There'll be likely 4,000 construction jobs while those plants are building in the province. There'll be private investment attracted here, and there'll be greater value for Albertans because we will be shipping refined products out instead of unrefined.
Thank you.
Okay.
And George, you have questions as well for the next?
Regarding the recovery, Minister, this is all, sounds really positive, really good.
Mm-hmm.
We feel that we don't see that in Calgary. Why don't we see it? What are we not seeing that streets are empty, restaurants are empty, the economy, the phones are not
I
ringing?
hope it's getting better, George. it's getting.
Well, I hope so. By hearing what you say, it should be, but.
Well, I think there's a very simple reason. Calgary is more focused because of the head offices here. Everybody knows it's very, very focused on oil and gas resources and all the industries that are attached to that, all the businesses that come as a result, the labor, the engineering, the lawyers, everybody's kind of connected. And when oil and gas suffers in this province, Calgary feels it more than any other city. And Edmonton, less so. But I can tell you that the amount of unemployment in Calgary was around 9% at its height, and it has dropped significantly. And it's not to the point of the provincial average yet, but it is a lot better now than it was. And there's some people who haven't they've had to take lesser jobs. They've had to take lower paying jobs. We all know that businesses shed a lot of people, and they shed a lot of expenses, and now they're hiring them back at lesser wages. But that's where Irfan comes in too. Did you want to say anything about how you're less than unemployment?
Sure. I think just to add what Minister said, that in Calgary we are way more reliant on oil and gas, and we do know that the downturn was primarily caused by the decrease fall in the commodity price, oil and gas. So that's why we were certainly hit hard. But on the other side, like social services, like the choice was that whether we balance the books and leave the deficit in communities, or whether we stand with the communities and provide them the supports they need to weather that downturn. So what we did, we added money to income support program, we added money to retraining those programs, skill development programs, we added money essentially through labor market programs, work with federal government to make sure that Albertans are hired first, and worked an agreement where LMO won't be issued for 27 different professions if Albertans are available to fill in those positions. So we took a number of steps where we can create jobs here in Calgary, here in Alberta. And while people are getting retrained, people are going back to schools, they have those supports available to them so that they can get back to the market and get on their feet.
If you allow me, Minister, now that we're talking about social services, I have a question. I have something that really worries me. When I was talking to the opposition, some red lights came on. Can we do something about recovering some of the health services? Why can we not reinstate a monthly fee that was removed in the good old days when there was lots of money? Why can't we have $50 per person or whatever back? Do we not need that? I'm talking about recovery. I don't know if this is within the subject, but
I think that Albertan want healthcare, quality healthcare when they are ill.
okay.
And we believe that it should never depend on the size of their pocket. Size of their wallet. They should always have access to a quality health care that is available to them universally. And that's what we have tried to do. And like that premium was removed. And I think a province like Alberta, where we have resources, if people pay their fair share, I think we can manage to provide that health care, continue to provide that health care on a universal basis, and regardless what their wallet size is. But if you want to add to that.
Yeah, no, I think Irfan is right. It's a major tenet of the NDP government that we believe all people should be treated the same in terms of delivery of healthcare services. In the past, there was a flat tax in this province, and that's when the premiums were also in place for healthcare. We don't have a flat tax anymore. If you make a little more, you pay a little more in taxation, and we should be able to fully bankroll health services for everybody as a result of all of that. And that's what we'll continue to do, George. And I just saw somebody else joined us. How do you do? Are you with the media or?
Media.
Good, thanks. Okay.
Monica is with Hispano City Calgary. She's with Hispano City Calgary news website for the
Oh, excellent. Thanks for coming.
So Rhett has some questions.
Oh, yeah, good morning,
Hi.
sir, yeah. With regards to Alberta budget 2018, is there any difference between the 2018 budget and 2017, specifically on healthcare system, education, and for the seniors?
And for the seniors, thanks, Violetta. You know, the healthcare and education, we're fully funding those things. I will tell you that healthcare has been really problematic because it's taken a lot of our budget. It takes about 43% of our budget, operating budget on an annual basis, about $20 billion. And so we've had to find a way to better smooth out the growth in the healthcare budget. And so this year we've targeted 3% growth in healthcare, which is, it's a challenge, but we think we can stay on it. And if we do that, we're able to better stay to our overall budget. So that's the difference this year. We've set a target of 3%. If the health minister were here, she would tell you about, she would rattle off the great number of things that are in the health budget that she's really proud of, that help Albertans out. I can tell you on the bigger picture though, 3% is a good growth. It's higher than other departments are getting, and because we know how important health is, and it's just such an important area. The other things around seniors, there are continue to be supports for seniors. The Minister of Seniors right here, she would talk about the $1.2 billion she has in her budget to address seniors' housing and affordable housing generally. So we're making sure that there is the growth in that area because we know that affordable housing is so critical for people. I think those are the two things that jump to mind. Do you have anything?
Like, with respect to health, I would add that in last 20 years, like there was cancer hospital filed in government offices. It was first time that we are fully funding the construction of that cancer hospital here at Hotel Spa.
Yep.
It's huge. Then Edmonton didn't get any hospital in last 30 years. And Edmonton is getting a hospital as well. And in 30 years, Edmonton population has grown significantly. If you talk about education, like in last 4 budgets, as Minister said, that we have fully funded enrollment growth, and which is almost $1.6 billion into education system. And with respect to senior and housing, like we inherited a huge deficit in affordable housing and all that. And last year, Minister Sigurdsson, she came up with the first provincial affordable housing strategy, and not just a document, but to go with it, there's $1.2 billion that we are investing in affordable housing and making sure that Albertans have some place to call home.
And there was another question, like, another part there?
Education, healthcare system, and the seniors.
Okay.
Yeah.
And in all these areas, we have maintained stable and predictable funding,
Yeah.
while at the same time controlling the growth and making sure that money is well spent and
Yeah.
making those financial decisions.
Yeah.
that we-
Thank you very much, sir. That's good to hear. Lots
Yeah.
of money
Yeah.
is voted.
So I'm just going to jump into the next section if I could, and that'll stimulate more questions, I think. It's on market access for Alberta. So market access, George is already laughing.
I'm crying.
No, you're
I'm
crying.
crying,
Oh, sorry.
I'm laughing.
You either laugh or you cry, one or the other, around market access. Market access for Alberta oil is obviously important to our province, but it's also vital for the Canadian economy as well, and I'll tell you about that right now. When Alberta's economy is firing on all cylinders or doing really, really well, it is the economic engine for this country. The benefits of our oil and gas industry do not stop at our borders alone. About 1/3 of all the goods and services purchased by Alberta's oil sands companies originate in other provinces. So for instance, in the province of Ontario, there's about 1,500 businesses that benefit because they work directly with the oil sands companies. About 1/3 of the goods, and and over the past decade, energy investment has accounted for more than 30% of the total private sector investment in Canada. And the majority of this investment came in Alberta. So just to think about that again, 30% of the private sector investment in all of Canada comes to Alberta and is located around the oil sands. That's an incredible amount of money. Securing access to Canadian tidewater is of utmost importance, of course, but because it will allow the oil that is everybody in Alberta owns collectively, it'll allow that to get to the best returns, international prices, and particularly it'll allow it to go to mostly Asia, where they'll pay international prices as opposed to the United States that pays a discounted rate for every barrel of oil that goes to the United States. It will also allow Canadian oil to reach, I said, the lucrative Asian market, and will help drive down that oil price differential that the industry experiences. Right now, our energy infrastructure is built for export to one place, which is the United States, and that's a very big problem. They are the monopoly buyer of all of the oil, and as a result, we sell to that huge discount down there. And they put some numbers on what that discount calls for and the lack of Trans Mountain connection to the coastline. They put a dollar figure on it. They said every single day that goes by without the Trans Mountain expansion, which will be a doubling of the existing pipeline, $40 million in revenue is lost to Canada and reappears south of the border. $40 million per day. So Canada's future to build Canadian pipelines to our coast means that instead of investment dollars circulating in our economy, they're circulating in America. And Donald Trump doesn't need any more money down there. So that's bad for Canada. It's bad for Alberta, and we will continue to fight until this pipeline is built. And you've seen Premier Notley's dedication on this file. She is committed 100% to this issue, and it's paying off as support across the country builds for the opinion, the stance that Alberta is taking. Every Canadian has a stake in getting top dollar for our resources because these are non-renewable resources. That's why market access issue is such an important one to all of Canada, our government, and all Albertans. Maybe I'll stop there. Yeah? Okay.
Sure. Pipeline questions, was your question pipeline related?
Yeah.
Is that how we'll go?
So the pipeline is integral to balancing the budget.
You bet.
Some may think that this is a risky move given all the issues that come with building the pipeline. Do you think it's a risky move?
No, I don't, because, you know, you need to build budget based on your best assumptions and forecasts, and that's what we've always done. When you look at the energy price forecasting, we've always used conservative amounts. Like now it's $59 a barrel that we put in our budget, and you know today it's likely around $68, $69 a barrel. So over the course of the year, we think we'll hit our $59 a barrel. That's just an example of conservative forecasting. We built the budget on assumptions we can count on because of approvals that have been already taken place. And we've also built our assumptions on the fact that we know Trans Mountain won't be built today. It will be built and it'll take 2-3 years to be built. So 2021, 2022 is when we've started to look at the uptick as a result of Trans Mountain in our budget. But clearly there are 3 pipelines that help out Alberta. Line 3, which is under construction right now, it's an Enbridge line. The KXL line, which I can't remember which company's behind KXL off the top of my head, but it's to the United States and it's got approvals. They're looking at some rerouting of one part of it, but it's got approvals as well. And Trans Mountain Pipeline, which has approvals, but hasn't started, as we all know. So I've built the budget on 2 of those 3 lines being present, which is a reasonable assumption to make, but only after 2021. So this budget takes us until budget 18, 19, and 20. So I don't even count on any of the returns from those 3 lines being in this budget. It's future budgets. So I don't think it's risky at all. I think it's based on good assumptions, and we need 2 of those 3 lines, either line 3 in KXL or line 3 in Trans Mountain will help us out.
And out-year projection
And pardon?
out-year projection will more than what was required.
Yes, yes.
So she's, oh, sorry, Mr. Sabir, go ahead.
Why don't you say it louder?
No, I was just going to add that what the minister said, that we had out-year projections more than what we needed to do according to the principles, accounting principles. So we were, I guess, showing the accounting up until 23, 24.
Oh, yeah.
In budgets, we usually include what?
3 years.
3 years out, but it's more than 3 years out.
Irfan's talking about the path to balance projections that go out to 2023, 2024. That's the first time a government in Alberta has done a 6-year, laying out 6 years of revenues and expenses. And we've done that to show our path to balance because we know that's important for Albertans, and we've done it. Rajiv?
So what is being done for the improvement in investment in renewable energy sector?
Which sector?
Renewable.
Renewal? Oh, renewables. Yeah. Good question, because we have built a climate leadership plan that talks about 30% renewables, either wind or solar or other kinds of renewables. Biomass is another one. 30% renewables by 2030. So we've got a focus on incentivizing renewable energy creation, and we're using the Climate Leadership Plan to do that. The Climate Leadership Plan monies will come into the budget and get used for a number of things. One is to incentivize renewables. Another is to get off of coal by 2030. So companies can apply for some of that money to shut down coal-fired generators and to turn them into gas-burning turbines to generate electricity. And the other part of the climate leadership funds help all of us kind of adapt our buildings and our buildings particularly to be more efficient, so that we can burn less greenhouse gases, less fuel to get a better atmosphere, a better environment for all of us. Okay.
So you just mentioned a while ago about the path of balance, right?
Right.
2018 to 2023. So I heard that it's going to be, we have to reach like $90 billion to get out of debt. So what will be the resources for this one to reach this 90 or
96. You know, the focus, at the beginning we said we wanted to make sure that Albertans didn't suffer as a result of the recession. Previous governments have cut drastically all the programs and services to keep the debt levels low. And we know that that would have been problematic because you leave a deficit in the community, as Irfan said before. You leave a deficit around infrastructure, not fixing it up, and then it takes you a lot longer to kind of address that. What we've done is we've kept things going for Albertans, and we know that we have the strongest balance sheet of any province. We've been able to lean on our balance sheet to borrow funds to address the programs and services, and the percent of our debt to GDP is how provinces measure their how good they are relative to their borrowing. We are the best in the country because we have low net debt and we have a high GDP. So we're about 8.7% debt to GDP. For instance, Quebec and Ontario are in the 30 to 42% debt to GDP. We're about 8%. And so we're very well situated to be able to pay off or pay down our deficit and then to deal with the debt we have going forward. Once we have once we have a balanced budget, we'll then turn our attention to the debt we've accumulated. But in the meantime, we're going to make sure we spend on the right things and we eliminate all the waste we can from our budget so that we don't accumulate any more increases to our debt. Okay.
So, excuse me, what is the ratio of debt to GDP here?
Debt to GDP, it's about, at the end of this fiscal plan, which will take us to 2020, it'll be 8.7%. And that's the lowest in the entire country if you look at all the provinces.
Yeah, good morning, sir.
Hi.
I was waiting, so I will like to add one thing with you about the renewable energy.
Sure.
So government, I read one article where it mentioned like government did very good stuff and getting some people from outside.
Right.
And you got a very cheap now renewable energy as compared to the previous thing.
Yeah.
Because you give the tenders and everything to the auction, yeah, that process. And
so you're right. It was
very creative step by your government, because I appreciate that, because we need to be a creative. It's like a business. Just when you are running a business, you have to be creative on the toe all the time so that you can do something good. So I appreciate you this one. And my another question is regarding that, like we are also part of NAFTA, like our major export is going to US only.
Right.
So they are, and Trump is Trump, you know, so he's doing, and he said like Canadians are spoiled, and So where we are working in NAFTA too, like is it just only federal responsibility they are working, or we as Albertan are also participating in
Oh,
that?
definitely. There's a connection. Our Economic Development and Trade Minister, Darren Billis, is in constant communication with his federal counterpart, Christina Friedland, and others, because they need to know how NAFTA will affect Alberta. And so we've been clear with the federal government, but we also work with the governors and the provinces, western provinces, all work with the governors of the states most closely aligned with us, and are trying to get on the same page, because those US states just below Saskatchewan, Manitoba, Alberta, and BC all benefit from their exports coming into Canada. And so they would suffer. They know they would suffer if NAFTA was not clearly in support of Canada and the US working closely together. So we've been on the same page with those governors and with the federal government. Yeah.
We are working very...
Yeah, we're working very closely.
That's good, thank you.
Sure.
With regards to the economic recovery, would you say then that the TMX pipeline would help if it's built?
Connie, my next section focuses on that. Yes, so I'm going to hold off just a second on that, and I'll tell you more about it, everybody more about it, and then we'll maybe answer your question directly. Okay?
Is your question on this topic?
Well, the question is on the pipeline, so
Okay,
we'll wait.
I'm
We'll
dealing
wait.
with that right now. All right, should I go next? I'll do the next piece. So I've already outlined the importance of market access to Canadian tidewater, to a Canadian coast. It's critically important that TMX is built in a timely fashion, and we're doing everything in our power to get that done. This past week, Alberta won 2 more court cases, you probably have all heard, in the BC courts. Alberta has won all of the cases that have been before the courts, and that's 16 so far. We've lost none. But I want to be clear that our government is committed to balancing the budget by 2023, 2024, regardless of potential delays to the Trans Mountain pipeline. Our budget forecast does assume there will be enough pipeline capacity to handle new oil sands production beginning in 2021. And that is because sufficient access can be accomplished through the construction of at least 2, and I mentioned this, 2 of the 3 proposed pipelines, Line 3 and Keystone XL, or Trans Mountain Expansion and Line 3. Keystone XL and Line 3 would provide the capacity we need for increased oil sands production between 2021 and 2023, while reducing our industry's growing reliance on rail transportation. Because with every barrel shipped on rail, it's a $7 extra charge. If you can get rid of shipping on rail, $7 more per barrel can be made by the companies and by royalties that we charge. However, I want to be clear. TMX would provide more flexibility in obtaining higher prices by gaining access to the lucrative Pacific markets, and would also mitigate against any potential U.S. market access issues and outages. TMX is obviously vital to our economy and would provide many benefits that the other pipelines would not, but we can still reach a balanced budget by 2023, 2024, even without TMX. At this point, our budget forecasts have not factored in the benefits of a potential uplift in prices that may arise from accessing Asian markets. We have budgeted conservatively when it comes to the oil price differential, so we feel confident that our path to balance is reasonable commitment to Albertans regardless of the outcome. So that's what I wanted to say about TMX. And now, Connie, what is your specific question?
Well, I was just wondering, like, the other one, Keystone Pipeline, is one issue before, now it's TMX, right?
Right.
So I was just wondering if ever we get successful on the TMX, is that going to be a big part of our economic recovery based on jobs and, of course, the influx of foreign workers
right.
who had been coming before? And most of them got affected too because of the recession in 2015, 2016. So in your projection, when do we expect, if everything goes well, when is the possible date that this TMX would start?
Yeah, so I think I mentioned it in here. We anticipate a growth in our economy of 1.5 to 2% as a result of pipeline access. That would be tremendous because right now we're projecting just under 3%, about 2.8% GDP growth in 2018, about 2.5 in 2019, and then going out at that rate. And if we can add another 1.5% on top of that, we'll be back in the close to 5% GDP growth, which would be a great benefit to all of us. I think I said in here that we don't need TMX to balance our budget in 2023, so any TMX will get built. I want to make no confusion about that. It will get built because it is in the interest and it is a legal, lawful project in this country. And when the taps are turned on for TMX, it take a couple years to build the whole thing. Once construction starts, there's already been construction up and around the Edmonton area for TMX. So when all of that gets connected, it'll take a couple years, and we will see a rise in our GDP of 1.5 to 2% as a result, which will be on top of what we've already planned and be a great help to getting back to balance more quickly. And it'll mean we can attack things like the accumulated costs that we have incurred as a result of having the backs of Albertans.
Thank you. Like in one of your interviews, I heard you that you're saying right now that we got these pipelines because it was approved by the federal government. Even though like we can see the role of the federal government in the whole situation that we are in now, and they are not clear if they are support us or if they support BC. Like there is no clear position that they are in regarding this situation between Alberta and BC. Like they take us to fight and they are sitting in a room or what?
Well, Mr. Morneau is going to be here on Tuesday. The finance minister, federal finance minister, is speaking to the Chamber of Commerce, and then the next day he's going out to BC to speak to the Chamber of Commerce in Vancouver. You know, I can't say too much because this is very delicate, but I can tell you that our Premier and I and Irfan believes that TMX will get built. It'll get built because the federal government has approved it, and they are supportive of taking the risk out of the whole cost, financial cost for Kinder Morgan or a company that's, that purchases Kinder Morgan if Kinder Morgan does not want to go on. So they've indicated that their support for the pipeline is there, whatever company delivers it. And we'll hear more of that on Tuesday, I'm sure, when the minister, or is it Wednesday? Anyway, it's one of those days next.
30th May. Yeah.
The 30th of May.
I think in short, I would say that federal government
is there.
Declared this in national interest, and they are fully on board. As Premier has said that whatever it takes, we are ready to do that. Yeah. If we have to invest in it, we are ready to do that. And same thing, federal government has assured us that they are willing to take that risk and have stake in this pipeline. So we are very hopeful that this project will go forward.
Okay, thank you. I have another question. Okay. It's related to the oil sector. So what I know that some of the east provinces take some of their oil from the Gulf area, not from us. And for sure,
Ontario and Quebec.
Yeah, and for sure it affects us.
Sure.
So what our government, Alberta, do regarding this, especially that I know that it's against the law, the Canadian law that they take from outside and we have it here.
Yeah.
So.
Well, you know, we do have national a national campaign right now talking about the importance of national energy infrastructure, TMX. And that is, the focus for sure is in BC at this point in time, but the national campaign is trying to get all Canadians aware that it's in our national interest to operate as one country and and be self-sufficient around our energy needs. And so I think there's a big understanding, a bigger appreciation that Canada lost something when they didn't support Energy East. Canada lost something when they started to look at dividing each other around Energy East. And so there's even more importance placed on TMX as a result, because this is a tremendous opportunity for our whole country to do better.
Thank you. Anyone else? I'll cut to you, George, if there's no one else. Any Nash? No one? Okay. Sharon, right?
No, go ahead.
Oh,
Sharon?
You go ahead first, and then I'll go to George.
Okay. I think I have a couple questions. As I said before, my background is in investment in energy, so we actually invest in very early stage E&P companies. So I have been working with them for 10 years, so we have sit together with a couple ups and downs. And I think, and I worked extensively last year to bring our energy product to China. And my feeling is it's really not a provincial initiative, it's a Canadian initiative. Even with the TMX, I think it looks like it's the BC government and the Alberta government are fighting against each other. But I think it's more a BC government fighting against the Canadian interest. So on both sides, both the TMX pipeline and the market access for our energy products, how do we better leverage the power of federal government? How can we get them more involved on the front line of all these battles instead of just us?
I think it's similar to the question Bunny was kind of circling around, and maybe I circled around too much. But I think we all have MPs as well in Canada. Mine is Kent Hare, and I don't know who your MP is, but voicing your views directly to them that they need to be more front and center. It's certainly something our Premier has done and all of Cabinet continues to do. I do believe that the federal government understands its responsibility on this file. Jim Carr, the federal Minister of Natural Resources, has been to Alberta many, many times on this file. And others on the environment side, McKenna, has also voiced her view that this is important to keep the climate leadership plan Alberta has in place. If we don't get access, which I believe we will get access, but if she's musing that we could see the climate plans for the country not achieved if Alberta isn't on side. So I think I'm trying to point out that all of Cabinet, the key positions, seem to understand at the federal level that this is necessary for our country. And on the 30th, when the federal finance minister is here, he will be saying much the same thing, that the actions they will take will move this TMX to the next step of completion. I think you're voicing the same views that many, many Canadians have, and that we have to operate as a country and not as a collection of provinces.
Yeah, I think we heard that our Premier says that it will be built and then it's of Canadian interest. But for people like us on the front line, we just don't feel enough support from the federal government. And also, like this lady said, East Province, they buy oil from Gulf of Mexico. I think because it's cheaper to buy from Gulf of Mexico than to buy from here. So when it's an economic decision, I don't blame those companies that do not buy it from us. So the energy infrastructure, even within Canada, I think it's a federal initiative instead of it's a Alberta initiative as well. So I don't know whether it's a question or it's more a suggestion that I think we need to push the federal government harder to be on the front line for us.
How would you push? What's missing from the existing things that are happening?
I don't know actually. I'm not in that circle.
Maybe Bunny, you asked the question. What do you think should be done?
I believe for now you are doing everything, but it's a little bit late from my point of view.
But I think you're right that it's pipelines are a federal jurisdiction. We do want federal government to exercise their jurisdiction more firmly. And BC, as you characterized it, BC is right now offside the national interest, and people, more and more people, even in BC, realize that this pipeline is not only in Alberta's interest, it will create jobs in BC, and there is no road, school, hospital across this country where Alberta hasn't contributed. Alberta is the engine of this, economic engine of this country. So certainly we would also want to see federal government doing those things more proactively and taking a leadership role and exercising their jurisdiction.
Yeah, I think since we belong to one country, I would think that the federal government should step in and make sure that we support one another. So even if they're from the West and they're from the East, what matters is like how much do they get from the Gulf of Mexico and how much are we going to give it to them if they get it from us. But the thing is like, there has been some kind of a separation between the East and the West. So that's why federal government has to step in. Like every time I go to the East, doesn't seem like they don't know where Alberta is. Like I was at the airport and I was checking in my luggage, and it was like more of the heavy and delicate one. And the guy told me, the security said, well, do you know that you have a limit? I said, limit to what? I'm just flying domestic. I'm flying home to Alberta.
Yeah.
So what limit are you talking about? So it's like, hello, we're both from Canada. I'm just flying west. So I think federal government has something to do with that as well, with the trade within the provinces.
I think we're all agreed. Okay, thank you, Cherry and Buddy and Connie. Yeah, we're all agreed on that.
Yes, I think just because there's lots who want one-on-one interviews with the minister, and it would be nice also to get a group picture with everyone. George, I'll keep your questions for your one-on-one because I know you have a one-on-one interview. Is there anybody else who's not interested in one-on-one but would like to ask a question now to the minister? Did you get it? No? Okay. So how about ministers? Is there any?
I just want to
Cherry's second question.
Very light comments about the 2018 budget.
Okay.
I have an 11-year-old in grade 6 in school, so he is somehow very interested in politics and trying his best to understand the provincial budget.
They always ask the toughest questions.
So, so when he heard that we will try to balance our balance sheet by 2023, he come back and asked me, he said, is that the reason that our visual journal book went from 100 page to 60 page? That's because they want to cut the spending. So I think you also mentioned on one side you try to balance, on the other side you try to protect public interest for hospitals and education. So there's a balance between these two things as well. So what's the government's view on how to balance? On one side, you need to balance the balance sheet. On the other side, you still need to spend on all those public initiatives, including for...
Well, we're trying to eliminate waste. So for instance, the highest paid executives of the agencies, boards, and commissions, those people, we have put them on reduced salaries. So we're eliminating $33 million a year as a result of benchmarking, better benchmarking, more to the public service as opposed to the private sector. Those CEOs of agencies, boards, and commissions, we found situations where they had private, there was contracts that had private health care programs and golf memberships and really expensive cars, and we said that's nice in the private sector if you can get it, but this is a public service, so we readjusted all of those people. We found other ways to eliminate waste, but we don't want to eliminate waste from the kinds of service, we don't want to eliminate budgets from the kind of services Irfan delivers on a regular basis, income supports for Albertans. We found places where we can take it out of the budget without hurting regular Albertans, and that's what we've done. But we do want to invest in the future in education, post-secondary education, and healthcare. All of those things are critical, and we'll continue to do them.
Sure, I think I would say that I will start with from 2015. So it was about choices. As government, we face choices every day. In 2015, we had a choice as well. Like when we began government, the revenues we collected from non-renewables was first year was $1.3 billion. And the year before, it was almost $10 billion. So there was $8 billion hole right there. So the choice was whether we cut education, healthcare, social services, or whether we incur this deficit and keep supporting kids in school, those who need services, those who are in hospital, and maintain those critical services that Alberta rely on in tough times, in ordinary times even, healthcare and all those things. So it was a choice to be made, like for kids, to tell them that, no, you cannot go to school until the price of oil hits 100. I don't think anybody will agree with me, right? And deficit can be paid back, but that missed window of opportunity for kids, you can't return them that opportunity. If it's once missed, it's missed. And we do know that investing in early education, investing properly in those services, there's a social return down the road, and those things can be repaid. So that was a choice that we made. That was the choice Alberta elected us to make. Like at that point when we were running, on the other side, the budget that was proposed, that previous government was running on, it has cuts to health care, $1 billion. They were going to lay off teachers, nurses. There were cuts to social services, $189 million they were cutting from education. But Alberta chose a different path. Alberta wanted us to keep investing in those services and manage the finances prudently so that we can diversify our economy, we can balance the budget, but in a way that we are not affecting children's education, not affecting healthcare, not affecting social services.
Is there, before we go to a group picture and then the one-on-one interviews, ministers, is there like any final thoughts or something that you both would like to message to everyone here?
Final thoughts, George?
No, I have questions about the pipeline though.
I will give it for you in the one-on-one interview.
Oh, okay, okay.
Right? We'll save it to that.
So, yeah, my final thoughts is I'm extremely pleased to be with you all today. It's been a pleasure to renew some acquaintances and to see people again who I've had a little bit of contact with. I'm always available to help explain the Government of Alberta's efforts and to come on your programs if you wish. Please feel free to connect through my office. And I want to thank Irfan for being here and for helping so well today. I think it's always good to get another kind of source of information, and Irfan's been a great. And thank you to the staff that are here to support as well.
Yeah, thank you everyone. I think that having these conversations are important, and especially for all of you who are journalists with press. You're the means and mode of communication from government to public. So having these conversations helps clarify what government is doing and also gives you an opportunity to share with the public in your communities those things objectively and with full information. So thank you very much for joining us. And as Minister said, we are the most accessible government in the history of this country. So reach out to us anytime.
Thank you. So let's just go maybe towards the flags all together, and I'll take a picture and I can email it to everyone.
This is Sunray Sabram Radio 94.7 FM. Sabram Radio, Navitaram.